This video looks at one of the most straightforward but effective approaches for using the EAT framework to enhance your assessment and feedback practices. One of the most effective ways to use the EAT framework is as a means of reviewing an assessment using all of the 12 sub-dimensions at once. For this, there is the EAT wheel, which has all 12 sub-dimensions together on a wheel. The idea here is to show the links between the different elements of an effective assessment and how they are interconnected. If you change one sub-dimension, this will impact on all of the others. The approach is to take each dimension and rate your assessment on a scale of 1, which means very little or no engagement with that sub-dimension, up to 5, which means a highly effective and well-embedded activity. When you have rated these, your wheel might look something like this. This approach makes it easy to see which aspects require most focus and development. You can therefore focus your time and attention on priority areas. An extremely powerful approach is then to undertake the same process with your students. Here is a student version of the EAT wheel using student-facing language. So instead of saying what you do in the assessment, the student wheel asks the student if they are doing that activity. A good method here is to give out copies of the EAT wheel to students and ask them to rate the assessment on the 12 sub-dimensions. You can then compare the two interpretations. In some cases, as you can see here for AL1, clarifying what good looks like, and AF1, accessible feedback, there is a discrepancy between the assessor and their students. The staff here feel that the sub-dimension is rated well, whereas the students feel otherwise. In cases where there are differences between your rating and those of the students, this does not necessarily mean that the aspect of the assessment is poor, but rather that it may require some dialogue with the students to understand where the discrepancies are and why. For example, the students here are scoring AL1, understanding what good looks like, much lower than the staff. This does not mean that the students are not aware of the criteria for the assessment or that the criteria are unfit for purpose. It might, however, indicate that the students do not really understand the criteria. And so, some discussion with them to help them understand better might change this discrepancy. EAT is about starting conversations that lead to positive changes for all parties and better learning for the students. This activity of engaging students with the EAT framework can help develop their assessment and feedback literacy. The wheel highlights elements that the students might not have considered before and lead to a useful discussion. It might be helpful to introduce these EAT sub-dimensions gradually rather than all 12 at once. For example, a short time after your assessment has been released, you could review the assessment literacy sub-dimensions with students to ensure they understand the marking criteria and parameters of their assessment. After the feedback has been provided on the assessment, you could engage them with the assessment feedback sub-dimensions to encourage them to use the feedback effectively and to surface any problems. At the end of the course or module, you could use the assessment design sub-dimensions to review their overall perceptions of the assessment as an activity. Using the EAT framework in this way provides easy approaches for gaining insight into student engagement with the assessment and also improving their understandings of how the assessment and feedback can benefit their own learning.